Yeah, I can't find it.
I did not even hear half of what you said there.
Can you hear me now?
I can. Did you like knock over your microphone or something? Or
Yes, yes, I did.
Okay, let me.
Well, how's everything going?
I don't know. I'm trying to figure it out at the moment. I need to get us back to just us. It's just going to be us today. Everything else going on, I don't have the patience to deal with people. I don't even know if I can look at the chat today at all. Just because while we weren't having any problem at the other place, when I had just one monitor on and OBS up, just now as I switched over, it was not showing our video when I had OBS up, so I'm probably just going to have the actual showroom or whatever in front of me the whole time. I have to have all the things I have pulled up over on my phone. It's hot.
Fun.
It's 106 degrees outside last I checked. I have no idea how hot it is in here. It has to be above 90 degrees in this room.
Yeah.
Maybe approaching 100. I don't know. I can feel a 10-degree difference when I walk out of this room past that door into the hallway. I have to have 2 different fans on, which I'm sure you can probably hear. The audience can definitely hear it while my mic is going on. So I'm muting myself when I'm not talking. And last I checked my forehead, for some reason, despite how hot I feel, my forehead is cold. And I don't know if this is because of the sweat that was dripping on, it's being cooled by the fan, or some other problem, but I'm not going to worry about that right now. We're on the Vomitorium. Welcome, everybody. And as always, I'm your host, The Metal, and joining me is my co-host, Marsupial Gamer. How you doing today? Pretty
good. I got to turn on my the lights on my chair that you can never see. I realize I need to be a skinny girl to for people to actually see the lights, or have the camera be more to the side.
Oh, I thought you were going to say that you need to be a skinny girl for people to actually watch this show.
Well, that would help too. But I'm doing all right. Air conditioning's working.
Oh God, I wish my air conditioning was working. It's like I was having a horrible week before this from lack of sleep. Come back, I get like 2-ish good nights of sleep. Air conditioning goes out. And both my wake and sleep has been horrible since then.
Yeah. Mr. Squeakers agrees it would improve the viewership if I were a skinny girl.
Well, listen, man, before you came on here, me and my old co-host, we were trying desperately to try to get a nice young woman onto this show. Even if she didn't show her face, my logic was like, we just need a girl's voice on here. It's like any radio talk show. Sometimes you have like the dumbest girl on there, but it's just nice to hear a woman's voice in the mix.
Yeah. Well, Twitch. Peach's air conditioning has been a little, touch and go this summer. So if it ever goes out, she might have to come over here, and I need to get a couch so she can just like lay down on the couch.
Yeah, she doesn't have to be on the show. She can just be in your background like Vanna White or something like that.
Yeah, she could just pop her head up and say, that was stupid or whatever. Of course, she wouldn't be able to hear anything if I had my headphones on.
No. So she could only say anything that comes out of your mouth is stupid.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So who knows? I might have a beautiful woman just, in my background randomly.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, because for over there, where you are, it is just as bad, if not worse, with heat on any given day. Like, sometimes you guys are even 10 degrees above us.
Yeah, for some reason, it's going to be 117 every day this week, according to weather.com. So that's nice.
Yeah.
It's like, I go outside in the evening after the sunset, and there's this breeze that comes along, and it's not a cool breeze. It's like just hot air blowing.
It's like
right
the desert spitting at you.
Yeah. Here, have a warm breeze.
Yeah, that's how it is right now. I mean, the one benefit is after you get past about 102, humidity ceases to exist. It just cannot sustain itself anymore. You are past not boiling point, but vapor point, and that's fine. So when it does finally drop down, since there was no humidity, hits 80, it's nice and cool. Like I can go outside for a walk and I feel just fine. I just have to wait until the sun's been down for like an hour before it hits that.
Yeah. Well, anyway, enough about us.
Yeah. I wish I could stop thinking about me. God. Normally I don't care, but like, you hit a certain point of the heat and it's like the only thing you can fucking think about. But I guess in the meantime we could start. I did have an article pulled up about the kid who leaked the information about GTA 6. It's been quite a while about this, and Take-Two Interactive has been trying to bring him to court for a while. I think we talked about this maybe a year ago. That's how long they've been trying to take him to the court. Well, he finally had his day in court. Yeah, not a full year. It was September 2022. So almost a year. We're gaining on it. Finally had his day in court. They were trying to get like $4 million out of him because that's what he was trying to ransom for the leaked information. So they're like, that seems like a just amount of money to try to penalize. And when they got to it, the judge deemed that he was mentally unfit to stand trial or be held accountable for his crimes.
How? Okay.
I mean, the guy's like,
Is he crazy?
maybe, I don't know. He's like 17 now. He had an accomplice too that was like the same age, like a contemporary. Maybe he's 18. Like they're 17, 18, which means they were like 16, 17 when this crime happened, and putting this huge ransom stuff. I think they're being deemed that they had absolutely no faculty of what they were doing, or anything like that. You know. Like, and there was a total of 12 offenses being taken against them too. And let's see.
So I take it they didn't get the money?
No, they didn't get the money. But there was a psychologist that assessed them, a third party that worked for the state. And the psychologist deemed that they weren't fit to stand trial, and a jury will decide whether he committed the crimes he's been accused of, rather than providing a guilty or not guilty. So he could still could be charged by like some measure. He's probably not going to be found responsible for anything close to the amount of money that the company wants from him. I'd honestly, if somebody's that unfit for trial, he's probably just going to be serviced with a stupid amount of hours of community service, because I believe the UK does that as well.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, I wonder if that includes just like not understanding the charges or not. Yeah.
I don't know. They didn't go into detail. I'm only speculating. It just says that a psychologist found that they were not mentally fit to stand trial. Yeah. Which still means...
Well, that's one way out.
Right? Well, it's not necessarily a way out. When that does happen, right, you can still be found fully culpable if you're not fit to stand trial, right? It'll be the nature of how like the jury receives this, and how the judge also receives the jury statement and stuff. I would just suspect that the guy's probably going to get off easy. He'll be found culpable. I think the jury's probably going to find some of the charges. Since it's 12 charges, I'm not even sure if all of them have to be accepted unanimously or not. They're probably individual charges that he could be like hit for some, not for others. And it's probably just going to be like mandatory community service, where he's going to be spending every weekend for the next few years doing stuff to pay it off.
Yeah. See, I agree with Mr. Squeakers. Maybe he's just too autistic to be tried.
Maybe.
Maybe he just didn't understand.
If that is a thing, which I'm sure to some degree it has to be if you're like really far on the spectrum. We just got to figure out like where the actual cutoff point is. This might be why a psychologist needs to be around, because it's going to have to be on a case-by-case basis. But if that's a thing, that's going to be a hell of a lot of trouble for the law in the future, judging by the fact that increased population density among other chemicals and stuff in our food supply is leading to a huge upspike in autism symptoms. So, I don't know.
I don't know. I still think I think the uptick in autism diagnoses is, I don't know, suspect to me.
Yeah, well, especially anywhere that's on like the high functioning end, I am equally suspect. Like low functioning, it's pretty easy to tell, but if we're looking at the numbers, even the low functioning end is proportionately getting a bit higher, and that could have to do with changes of medical prescriptions during pregnancy, especially because like we're making women not eat sodium during pregnancy, which is like the worst thing you can do to a pregnant woman. That's why they crave like pickle juice and stuff like that, right? As well as other chemicals that are going into our diet. Probably not like an effect after birth because you're pretty much autistic at birth, but prenatal, that would definitely have an effect. Plus, I do think that you see a rise in things similar, at least on the high-functioning end of autism, as populations get denser anyway, just because there are some trade-off advantages to being on the high-functioning end of autism.
I guess. I just suspect that a lot of it is because it's trendy for some reason to be considered autistic.
Like I said, I do think that,
and I wonder,
the higher end is suspect. I would agree.
Yeah.
With that.
Like, I wonder how many people who claim to be have actually been diagnosed by a doctor. I don't even know.
Yeah, because that's the other thing. Like, diagnosis is up for it, but the claims are probably maybe up to an order of magnitude higher than people who have actually been diagnosed.
Yeah, I've only ever met one person in my life, I think, who is autistic, and I could tell from talking to them. It was someone I met last year at Anime Matsuri. I tried to have we were having a conversation, but she never looked at me the entire time and wasn't being rude and wasn't paying attention to somebody else. Just couldn't look at me in the eye, and it was odd. But I was just like, oh, I am meeting for the first time in my life an actually autistic person.
I've met someone.
Which is perfectly normal, other than not
Right.
being a bit socially awkward.
Yeah. And that a lot of them are. Most of the autistic people I've met have been in the higher range of function, but I could tell. I think it's the fact that like I tend to have hung out on like the fringes and corners of society, that I was more likely to run into autistic people because they tend to be like social outcasts and stuff. But I can not use both. Well, I could probably count on one hand how many I've met in person if I'm using the old school counting method where you can count like up to 12 on one hand. I think I've probably met 11 or 12 autistic people, like people I can definitely say without a shadow of doubt have some level of autism to them. In my life. Now, I've talked to more, obviously, because we're on the internet, and it's pretty easy to run into actual autistic people on the internet. But in person, I've probably met up to 12.
Interesting.
It's still a very low amount,
I don't
given
know.
the fact that like I've interacted with thousands of people in my life.
Yeah. I'm not fully convinced that there is a proliferation at all, but it's hard to tell.
Yeah. Well, I that's the thing. Like upper end, again, I think it's suspect, even on the diagnosis section, because there's a lot of things that are just being lumped in, and some people are getting diagnosed with stuff just because they had a bad month, right? Because people aren't like solid from month to month.
Yeah.
Like you could be solid most of the time and then have like a really bad month where you change something in your diet or you're out of whack and you're acting almost completely unlike yourself. You get it, what people used to call in a funk, right?
Or anxiety. I wonder.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the uptick in anxiety is real. I think
And there's a
people are
huge
panicking about
crossover
nothing, but
in autism and anxiety behavior, because I mean, if you were autistic and you weren't necessarily functioning well in society for one reason or another, it would drive up anxiety on its own. And also, if you're seeing a lot of false patterns, which is something that autistic people are known for, their pattern recognition is like through the roof, and they end up seeing patterns that aren't there a lot of times. That would also drive your anxiety up.
I suppose so. Joshua was asking if you have 12 fingers on each hand.
No. So like, when we
Talking
started
about
using, I guess, but when we started dealing in base 10, that's when we started counting like this, right?
Yeah.
But a lot of older societies used things that were closer to like base 12, which is why you see like a lot of things are done in 12s and 60s, and 60 used to be considered a round number. And you can actually count to 12 on one hand if you use the segments of your finger and your thumb to count. So it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And then you can actually count up to 60 by doing that on the other hand, because there you could touch the top one, and that's one set of 12, and then you can repeat again.
Should be able to count up to 144.
Well, you should be able to,
think.
but nobody ever counted that high.
Oh, I see.
I'm sure there were people who actually did, like if you were a quarry keeper or actually a farmhand, but most people only count on their first few fingers. They didn't like actually keep going all the way over to the end. Most people didn't need numbers that high unless you were like storing grain or something. When did you ever need to count past 100?
I was going to say you could do it in binary. It'd be 1, 2, 4, 8. You could count up to 16 on one hand.
But that's also why I was learning this recently. Why certain numbers appear, like say in old texts like Sumerian myths, or even like the Bible, like in the Old Testament, and they'll say something like Seth lived to 912 years old, and you're like, okay, no, that makes sense because that is a perfect form of 12, so that would be just like an impressively high number. That'd be like saying somebody lived to 500 years old or something like that.
Well, okay. Well, I have some other interesting news.
Oh, what do you got?
Concerned Ape tweeted, I guess it was yesterday, that Stardew Valley, we knew Stardew Valley 1.6 was coming, but he had said earlier that it was just going to be an update that would help mods, that help mod creators in some way. Apparently, it's more than that. They're adding new festival, new items, more dialogues, and secrets.
Oh, secrets. Yeah, I'm not surprised.
Couldn't stay away.
At all. Yeah. He can't. He wants to, but he can't. Because he also doesn't want to at the same time.
Yeah, considering 1.5 was like enormous. It was like he added ostriches and a whole new dungeon and a whole new like in-game currency practically with the golden coconuts and actually I think that was when he added the whole new island. In fact, it was with 1.5, so it's like crazy, gigantic, practically doubled the size of the game.
I just hope that he's still seeing a rise in copies of the game being sold, like new players and stuff, or even people buying it on a new system. Because, like, I had it on PC, but I want to play it on my Switch now or something. Because he's made enough off that game that he can continue to support it without having to worry about it. But I still want him to be bringing in more money with how much he's putting that game. He's put in as much work as a lot of, like, service games have put into there. And it's all basically for free if you've already bought the game. Right, like there's a base price, and that's it. Yeah.
I wonder if there are metrics. Sales history. How many copies have been sold? 20 million.
Okay, I was hoping it was in that order of magnitude. If it was only in like between 1 to 6 million, I would be very upset at this point.
Hmm. How much do you think he makes on each sale?
I don't know. I think that's going to vary from shop to shop. He keeps the price outside of sales consistent from store to store, but different stores have different cuts, right? Like he's probably making more off of the Switch, or
Yeah, it's
I don't know,
15.
Like, I think GOG also has an okay price, but like Steam and Apple are going to be fucking him over on what he gets back.
It's $15 on Steam. But I mean, do you think he makes $5 per copy? $1? I mean, what? somewhere in
Well, I know
between?
Steam takes like 30%, or they take close to a third, right?
He'd be making $10.
Yeah, but then we have to adjust that. Like, how much of that is he going to be keeping? Because he's gonna have to pay tax on what he gets too.
Yeah.
So I'd probably with his income like bracket, he could be paying up to a third of his income in taxes. But he might get actually tax deductions. He might have hit one of those bigger break points because he has to be having $1 million already. I'm gonna round it. I'm gonna say he probably spends like 28% of his income on taxes.
No, it's more than that.
Do you think it's gonna be more than that?
Yeah. I mean, you're forgetting about like self-employment tax alone is 15%.
Where does he live? That's also gonna matter too.
Oh, yeah. I'm assuming United States.
Well, no, which
I might
state
be
does
wrong
he live
about
in
that.
is gonna be the important part.
Well, I'm just talking about federal tax.
Yeah.
I mean, federal tax at that level is close to 50%.
Yeah, it could be.
I think.
So let's say
Still,
we
If
can
it-
go
if he-
two
if-
ends. It could be between
his take
25
home-
to 50%.
yeah,
Yeah.
but if his take home was $5 a copy, then he's made $100 million.
Yeah. He's still good. That's why I was trying to round it
Like
down. Like
after
I'm probably
taxes.
just gonna go down to 5. Like that's what I was gonna round it to
Yeah.
anyway. But yeah.
Yeah, after taxes, it's like, wow.
If we're generous, we can say he's made $7 a copy.
Yeah. That's plenty for him to just do updates for free
Yeah.
forever.
He might also, though, depending on the state he lives in, he might be making less than $5 a copy. But even let's say he only gets on Steam $2.50. That's still plenty. If he only got $2.50 per copy, he'd still be getting plenty. Like after taxes,
Yeah.
he'd be fine.
Yeah, I don't. The sales chart doesn't show how many sales. It just shows.
Yeah. Now, Nintendo, depending on, I think it depends on your size, what you get. But I think for like smaller indie games, they only charge like 8%. It can get up to 12. Obviously, he sold a lot, so I'm gonna say it's gonna be 12. He's gonna be making a lot more money off of the Switch copies than he did off of the Steam copies.
Wow. So this is actually. So if this is right, he had sold 15 million copies by September 2021, and 20 million by 6 months later. He sell 5 million copies in 6 months.
Yeah,
so he might
that
be up
makes
to
sense.
30 million.
I don't
Might
know.
be up to 30 million by now.
It could be.
40. God damn. 5, 10, 15. Yeah. We got to make a game like that.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I want to make a game. I was actually about to the other night. I was gonna go into the closet. Here is the art room. I got a desk and everything, and I was going to draft up what I wanted, like the main character to look like, but it was just even in there, it was just so damn hot. I could not like focus on drawing at all. It was just too damn hot. I need to do something. I don't know. Maybe I'll have to go bring my sketchbook into the bathroom and spend extra money on the water bill and just have cold water running in the shower to cool off the room while I'm drawing or something. I don't know.
But yeah, according to this, his sales are accelerating.
Yeah, I would
point
assume
where-
so.
I wouldn't be surprised if he sold 40 million copies by
Is
now.
it available on mobile? I would assume it is, like Android market and
Yeah.
stuff. Yeah, okay. So Android,
But-
Apple, he's getting it too. Android gives a little better cut than other
think-
ones do.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah. Because I think Nintendo and Xbox are about the same. Right? I think Xbox is just like a couple percent or something higher on their indie market. Then I think it's Android after that. Then GOG, I don't think
Yeah.
actually has a specific deal. I think it's a case-by-case basis because I can never find information on what they charge like indie developers. But then like you get the higher end and it's like Apple and Steam are about the same. I think Apple sometimes is even like 3% higher. Like Steam is 30 flat and Apple can be up to a actual third of the sales.
Yeah. But it's only $5 on iOS.
Yeah, so he's not making shit off of iOS.
I mean,
Yeah. I mean, it's still money.
depends on how many millions.
Right, it's
Yeah.
more than I'm making month by month, but compared
Yeah.
to the other ones that he's selling, like we're going to talk about comparatively, he's not making shit off of iOS. It's one of the cheaper
Yeah.
versions of the game, and it's got like the highest revenue split with the store.
Yeah. Oh, well.
I'd still be happy with it though. Like if I
Yeah,
had that
yeah.
kind of
Well,
money, I would toss it on my bed and roll in it.
I mean, considering it's just him, I don't know if he pays, ongoing royalties to anyone else or if it's just him.
I think he does have to pay some royalties for some things, but he probably has that accounted for on the copy, right? So I believe he had assistance in the port of the console versions of the game, so that probably has to have royalties out. And I forget, he does almost everything except for one thing. I can't remember what it is. Was it music? It was one thing that he got assistance
Yeah.
with. So I think he has to
Figures
pay
music.
royalties out on the music as well. But still, I mean, he's still raking in millions. Like, even after all of
Yeah.
that, he's still raking in millions.
Yeah. Well, considering he's apparently selling at least 5 million copies or 10 million copies a year, basically.
Oh, that was rough. Oh. Okay, the can of Pepsi I
Good.
was drinking, I had put it in the fridge for like 10 minutes just to bring it back down to room temperature earlier. The can I just opened now, I pulled right out of the box that's been sitting in this room. And sip 2 is fine because I'm expecting it. Sip 1 hit like battery acid.
Ugh. Yikes, you need to get that fixed.
Yeah. Oh.
Well, I'm sure he's also going to be making millions on the Haunted Chocolatier if that ever comes
without
out.
a doubt. Without a doubt. Everybody's hyped for it. There is a issue though that I see. If he can't stop working on Stardew and actually get this game out, I think he'll still be making a lot of money, but his potential profits are going to be a lot lower because it's going to lose hype and have to return to the same word of mouth that Stardew Valley was in the first place to some degree. Like there'll be people like you or I who are following it and will hop on it as soon as it's available. But then like a bunch of regular people who played Stardew may not even be paying attention to know when it comes out, and they won't even know to hop on it until somebody else tells them about it.
Mm-hmm.
You can't. We've seen this happen way too many times. You can't let that development process ride on forever because you just lose all of your marketability because people forget about you.
I guess. But I'm sure it'll be big news when it comes out. I mean,
I hope.
it'll be all.
I'll try to make a stink about it, but you know what limited reach we have. Hey, actually, who knows how long it might take? We might have a much bigger audience by the time that game finally comes out.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
It'll be years from now.
I think this is a kind of a similar category in the fact that one of the better selling versions of the game. I would assume Steam is still the best selling version of Stardew, but I think the Switch has sold so many copies, it's probably the second at this point. But future Nintendo and PC gaming handhelds like the Switch or like the Steam Deck could have to require having replaceable batteries due to a new regulation that the EU is putting out to cut down on waste products while enforcing customers' rights to repair their own hardware. This has been one of the few issues I have with the Switch. Luckily, I haven't had this issue yet, but I know people who've had, or the Joy-Cons are equally an issue with this if you happen to have the Switch Lite, because you can't just take them off and replace them easily. You have to send it in. But Nintendo products right now are horrible for the right to repair. It's going backwards from the 3DS, where you actually could easily get a replacement battery for the 3DS. The back came off very easily. The Switch's battery is kind of like fixed into the system. You have to like send your Switch in to replace the battery, or you have to know like soldering yourself to be able to replace the battery, and you're going to have a third-party battery. You're not going to get one from Nintendo. And it's I get why Nintendo wants to do that. Like, I even got why Apple wanted to do that before they got crazy with planned obsolescence, because I think they started doing the non-replaceable battery before they realized that it was good to have planned obsolescence. Like, I don't think they started miserable, because Jobs was still around, and as much of a businessman, he was trying to make things affordable for people. That was like one of the big things that he was trying to do to increase his market, right?
Mm-hmm.
The benefit is, if you have it that way, one, the battery connection is better. It charges better too. Like, all the function of the battery is better. And you can make sure that people don't accidentally fuck up when replacing the battery if they have to come in and get it replaced by somebody who knows what they're doing. The downside is it's stupid expensive to have somebody else replace your battery, because you're going to pay for the cost of the battery plus the labor cost of getting the battery replaced every single time. And it's your thing. You should have the right to repair it anyway. Like, you know, fuck anybody who says otherwise. And it just easily gets companies like Apple realizing, oh, we could just also make more money if we do it this way. And they had to be yelled at by courts about that too.
They used to just have a little thing, a label that said, you know, if you open this, you void the warranty. I don't have a problem with that.
Yeah, I didn't either.
But
I don't need to bring things in after that point.
Yeah. And I mean, like you said, did you say this? I missed your intro to this. That the Joy-Con is extremely easy to repair?
The Joy-Con is if you have actual Joy-Con controllers.
Yeah.
The one I was saying that wasn't was if you have a Switch Lite, which you can repair it the same way, but you're actually having to crack open the entire case of the Switch Lite to do that, which means you're prone for other problems if you don't know what you're doing, like wires could get loose and stuff. And the only way to get that replaced, because some people, they just buy new Joy-Cons, is expensive, but that's a valid replacement. You can't do that with the Switch Lite. You have to send the whole Switch in to be repaired at that point. So I like this. I usually think the EU has really stupid regulations, but I am very, very pro right to repair, and lately it seems they've been doing more for people over there than we've been in the States. So I like seeing stuff like this. If Nintendo and Valve have to do this to please the EU market, and well, Nintendo doesn't care as much about Europe as others do. Valve does, right? That is a huge market share for them. These are people who have been baked into PC gaming, not having access to Nintendo early on. That's also why they're a huge market for PlayStation, because a lot of Europe didn't really get service for Nintendo until the GameCube era, and the GameCube didn't actually do very well, right? Like, there was people who had 64s, but you could go to like Poland and realize nobody in Poland actually owns a Nintendo product, right? So I like this regulation because it affects us, right? Anything that's made for an international market like that, then we get replaceable batteries too. This is a good thing.
Yeah, I think so.
I'm trying to see what else we had. I had a few things pulled up, but... Oh, here's another thing revolving around the Nintendo Switch that is kind of on one degree, but very wholesome on the other. So apparently the FBI can use your Nintendo Switch data, like, easily. I think they got a warrant for it, but it wasn't like hard for them to get the warrant. At least it was for a good cause. But they basically used the Nintendo Switch data to find a missing girl who was 2,000 miles from home, which is kind of crazy to ever find somebody that far from home. Usually, once you're at that distance, you're off the radar. You're gone. Like, what's the 48-hour mark? If you've been missing for longer than 48 hours, you're basically gone. And 2,000 miles, that's easily more than a day trip. You could be missing for more than 48 hours at that point. And they used the location data. I'm trying to find exactly where it was, because I think the girl actually connected to the Nintendo Switch Online at a local Wi-Fi spot. And being able to look through the eShop records or whatever, they were actually able to figure out where her approximate location was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, 2,000 miles. I mean, geez. I drove 1,700 and it took 3 long days.
Yeah. It was very dark case, too. It's a good thing she was found. She was, I think, do they have her age on here? 15 years old. And she befriended a man online that was 28 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And he brought her all the way from Virginia to his home in Tulsa, Arizona. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
He was here, huh?
Yeah, and forced her into CP. What's a cheese pizza? Forced her into cheese pizza. While I don't like the fact that they can use your data, FBI and warrants and stuff, good on you, because that's a good thing happened. Yeah.
That's good.
Sometimes good things come out of this.
Yeah, well, it made me think, like, I wonder if I could have done that to find my stolen Switch. I wish I doubt that Nintendo would have given me the information.
So even if the Switch comes on, though, I think you actually have to connect to an online service, right? So that would mean that they would actually have to use your account to open up the eShop or play a game that connects to online. If somebody took your Switch, they probably just pawned it immediately, and most pawn shops just factory reset those consoles when they get them. So,
well, I deactivated it remotely, so.
Yeah, I mean, you probably didn't have to for the sake of that console, but I mean, it's the same process of remotely transferring what your main thing is, so you're going to eventually have to do that anyway.
But you need to get those little Apple dots or whatever, or the Amazon. I don't know who makes them. Those little stickers, basically, that connect to GPS. That have like GPS embedded in them.
Yeah.
You can basically use Find My iPhone to find anything that you put the sticker on.
Yeah, or we can just start like going to the vet and tagging kids like we do dogs or whatever, It could be in a fine spot, no, you don't want it. You want it to be almost a random spot, because you don't want like predators to know where to look for the chip, right?
Yeah.
And if it's so random, they won't even bother to look. If anything, it'll just start dissuading predators from taking people in the first place because they know they're chipped. But like, you want it kind of easy enough to get to, so that you're 18, you can take the chip out now.
Yeah.
Or I don't know, maybe we could make some way to where it like self-destructs painlessly at 18, like nanobots disassemble it or something like that. You don't even have to worry about it. We have an exact time on your birthday. We set the clock, and then the nanobots will just like disassemble the whole thing and will get filtered out through your sweat or something.
What if I want to know where my child is when they're 25?
Well, I mean, they're your offspring, but they're no longer your child.
Oh well.
I would say just have a good enough relationship with your child that at the age of 25 they want you to know where they are. Maybe not too good though. You don't want them like texting you every single day like, "Hey, I lived 2,500 miles away, but I'm going to the store right now." He's like, "I don't need to know that."
Yeah.
Unless you're like, okay, you know what? I'm gonna take that back too. If you're the only person in their life, maybe they should. I do think one of the reasons people go missing is because they have nobody that they alert, right? Like, if being a sibling, right? Like having siblings, I'm in that kind of like mindset that if I'm leaving the house, I let other people know I'm leaving, even though I don't have to. Like, I'm an adult. I just let other people know where I'm going, right? Because that's just something you do growing up. And then I always think about, what's the name of that movie? It's like 128 Hours or something. The one where the guy's hand gets stuck under the rock. And the whole reason he was in that situation, though, is he does those trails all the time. Usually he tells people where he's going. He didn't tell anybody he was going off on the trail. Nobody even knew he was missing to look for him. And that happens to people. Like, sometimes it's not even, you're not getting abducted. An accident happens and nobody even knows where you were going to know to look for you. It's like, man, they haven't been back in 3 days now.
I mean, if I, well, it depends on the day of the week, but depending on certain things, well, I guess no. Let me put it this way: if I died on a Wednesday night, nobody would know probably until you contacted me on Saturday and couldn't get in touch with me.
Possibly, yeah.
Well, my boss would probably wonder what's going on.
And then have to track you down some way. I don't know.
Yeah.
I was like, man, it's been 3 Saturdays and I haven't been able to contact him. I guess I'm going to have to go all the way to Arizona.
Yeah. I'm going to be pretty stinky by then. If you wait 3 weeks.
Yeah. Or at least, I don't know, I'll
warm.
have to, like, track your girlfriend down on social media or something like that and be like, hey, he hasn't actually responded in 3 weeks. Do you want to go over his place and check in on him?
I think she would have checked on me long before.
I would hope. But I'm saying, last ditch scenario, that's like the case.
Yeah. In fact, just this weekend, my phone was acting weird. I ended up having to reboot it, and I didn't get a message of hers like that she sent on Sunday. And on Monday, she was like, "Hello, are you okay?" Like, because usually I'm responding at least within an hour. And the fact that I didn't respond for a whole day, she got a little worried.
Yeah, that's why. Well, I'm taking the scenario that we've already made it to Saturday, right? So I would hope that before that, if it's been several days that you haven't responded, she already checked in. If that hasn't happened,
Probably.
I don't know. Maybe both of you were in the same vehicle and a car accident happens, right?
I suppose so. We're both stuck under a rock. We had to cut off each other's limbs to get out.
Have to work together because for some reason it's both of your good arms that are stuck under there.
Yeah, that's right. Aw, matching stumps. Cute. Oh, hey, Fizchozo. Hey, it's the Fizchozo Corner.
That's his new YouTube channel name. I know he's been trying to build it up. Yeah. Let's see. So, I mean, I guess because we're not having visitors on today, if you guys are interested, you can always click on that. Well, actually, I think only mods can actually follow people back to their channels. But you could probably just copy and paste that and find it, and maybe check out what Fizchozo has to say if for some reason you ever enjoy the stuff that he says when he hops on here. I'm not going to judge. But in the meantime, hey, there's an app that I heard about a while. We were going to talk about it, but never... We ran out of time 2 weeks ago when it was first announced, called Pokemon Sleep, and it's finally going to be available in some reasons. It's a sleep tracker for Pokemon that a lot of the visuals are similar to like Pokemon Go and stuff, and apparently they put a lot of investment to making this a very, very accurate sleep tracker to the point that it can even suggest when you should go to sleep based on your sleeping habits. Like, hey, we've been looking at your habits, and if you go to sleep like an hour earlier, you'd probably be better off. And it seems to be pretty family friendly, like not very invasive. It's a phone, so if your kid happens to have a phone, I don't know why you would give anyone before the age of 13 a phone, but you could. I mean, even for 13-year-old, teenagers have a horrible time sleeping. Maybe you could have a fun, friendly way to get your teenager to go to sleep at a proper time because Pokemon told them to. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe.
I don't know if you have a teenager that likes Pokemon.
Is it available now, or is it not
So
yet?
right now, they're
Okay.
testing it. It's only available in Australia, New Zealand, Canada, and Latin America. I could test it, probably with a direct APK, because I do have both a Pokemon, Trainers Club account, and a Nintendo online account. I don't know which one you need for this. I'm assuming the former. Set to Australia. I actually have an Australian account, usually for testing stuff early, because Australia always gets everything for testing. It's a smaller region. It's a safe region to test in.
Do you know there's an app called Pokemon Smile that
Yes,
helps teach kids how to brush their teeth?
Yeah. They're doing a lot of stuff. I think Pokemon is actually the perfect vehicle for stuff like this. I know they had some VHS tapes and stuff back in the day for things like that, but we're not in that era anymore. The phone is the place to do it, right? Or on the tablet, which that's far more likely what a kid's gonna have is like a tablet that their parents bought them, same app store, and it's like, yeah, if you can get your kids to brush their teeth through that, do it totally. Pokemon should be in more educational zones too. It is the largest media franchise that everyone knows. They never have trouble finding new people to get into it, because it's not hard to sell kids on Pokemon. They're cute and destructive at the same time. All kids' favorite things.
Yeah. Have you ever played Magikarp Jump?
Oh
can't
yeah.
even say it.
I played all the way through that during its initial
Yeah.
release. I don't know if they added more levels since
gosh.
then or whatever, but yeah.
I haven't played in so long. I can't even remember what the game is.
So
But I have
it's
played it.
kind of just a farmer game, right? It's like a cookie clicker without the clicker, and you're just going through different things to it's a breeding game. You make a stronger Magikarp, you hit the button, and then it jumps up to compete against other Magikarp. You hit a level where your Magikarp stats are too low, so you go back through the loop to make a better Magikarp, and it just keeps going that way. It's a very simple game, but that was made as a joke, and was way too successful because everybody loves jokes like that. Magikarp is everyone's favorite joke.
Yeah.
I actually have a friend. His name
favorite
is.
Pokemon.
Oh, is it your favorite Pokemon?
I don't know. It's cute.
Be serious. What is your? Think about it. What would be your favorite Pokemon?
I will tell you, unironically, Magikarp is Peach's favorite.
I mean,
She
that's
has
fair
said
though.
that
Yeah.
on multiple occasions. And she was serious. Mine? What's mine? I don't know. What's yours?
My
Let me think
favorite
about it for a
Pokemon
second.
is Umbreon. I didn't even have to think about it. It's been Umbreon since Umbreon came out. A little tiny shadow dog.
I think mine is Eevee.
All right, that's fair. I like
Eevee.
Eevee, which of course I'd have to like Eevee if I like Umbreon, but Eevee's cool because it's potential. It could be anything. You know?
I think I like the unevolved Eevee.
Yeah. I would like if Eevee, and I think everybody's been asking this for years, somehow had a normal evolution. Like, maybe there's, usually when you get an Eevee, that's how you get the Everstone or whatever, the one that stops Pokemon from evolving if you have it equipped. But I think, like, it'd be really cool if Eevee was the only Pokemon that had a different interaction with that. So if it got hit a certain level with the Everstone equipped, that it would just become a normal type evolution, right? Maybe you could even just call it like Evian or Everon or something like that, you know, like yeah.
So I get like an adult version of Eevee that's not specialized.
Yeah, it could have like spikier, scruffier hair, same color palette and everything. Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, and in fact, when I bought what's it called, Pokemon Let's Go on the Switch, and I have the Eevee version. I chose the because I liked it.
Yeah, I probably would have gotten the Eevee version too. I never bought it because it looked really dumb to me. I did end up playing it, and afterwards felt
it was a dumb
justified
game.
in not purchasing it. My brother got
I liked it. I didn't get it right away. I found out because I didn't really look much into it until later, and I found out it's essentially a remake of Pokemon Red and Blue.
Yeah, it's the Kanto region again. That's why it's Pikachu and Eevee, because in the yellow version and in the show, which the yellow version was made to mirror the show more, Ash had a Pikachu and Gary started off with an Eevee.
Right. So when I found that out, because I've never played the original Pokemon like through to beginning to end, I played a little bit, but I never played the whole thing. So I was like, oh, I want to play this, and it's kind of nostalgic, but at the same time, modern graphics and stuff. So. But it is a little boring. I mean, Pokemon already is boring to me, but just, the fact that all you do is throw your fucking ball.
Yeah, it's just
things.
Pokemon Go. Well, that's why I hated it, right? Yeah. So the rest of the game still feels like it. They had the trainer battles, the gym battles, so it still felt like you were playing Pokemon, but it took like all the fun out of catching Pokemon for me. While for some people, they really liked it because they liked Go, and they never really liked the grindy aspect of catching Pokemon, so it made it more fun for them.
It's kind of more grindy because it really encourages you to catch the same Pokemon over and over and over. Like you get bonuses from catching, 100 of the same Pokemon in a row, and it's like, oh my god.
Yeah, well, and it also, I think it used the Go combat power system too. So it's like,
where it has the little circles that go like that.
Yeah, so it made it super grindy.
Yeah, but I will say this: it's not just that. You still have the random people that you run into on the road, and then you battle them.
Well, that was the part I actually liked. I was like, okay, this feels like a Pokemon game to me.
Yeah, I like that too. But it's only the catching wild Pokemon that they changed. Just throwing the ball.
Yeah.
But I still liked it.
Well, and it was like, it was really weird because that was when they were making their transition out of random encounters. So they still technically had it, but it was like that exclamation point that would go above your head, so you have to accept if you actually wanted to go into an encounter or not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you can see the Pokemon for the most part.
Yeah.
On wandering around. Although sometimes you just see some rustling in the grass and you wouldn't know what it is until you touch it.
Yeah. And that was like where they hit that halfway point. It's like we do have random encounters. You can't turn that on. But you still have to like hit A to accept that you were going into the encounter. Otherwise, it's the ones that are walking around.
You can effectively run away or whatever. Although I think the running away resets your catch count, I think. So there's an incentive not to do that.
Yeah. Because you could always run away in the original Pokemon, as long as your Pokemon's speed was appropriate. A lot of people always thought it was level. It's not. In the original games, it was actually your speed. It's just that your stats are affected by your level. So if you were like 5 levels down, you're probably not going to be faster than the Pokemon that you, or within parity of the Pokemon that you're trying to run away from. It's a very weird system. I looked at the math before in the original game, how it worked, but it's like your speed by their speed will equal like a % chance that you can run away.
Mm-hmm.
Like it makes sense for like a game design aspect, but like a lot of the formulas in the original Pokemon game, it was kind of janky. Pokemon really became what we know now, or I would say now, what we knew up through Sun and Moon around Ruby and Sapphire. That's where like, the real good formula started to come in. They figured out what they were doing.
Yeah, well, if you think about it, when it's such a math-heavy game and you're writing it all in fucking assembly language and you're doing like bit shifts and all that bullshit that you had to do back then, I'm not surprised that there were bugs. I mean, there are bugs in everything from Final Fantasy to Pokemon.
My favorite unintended, I guess you call it a bug, but unintended consequence of the system is they had no hex limiter for some of their moves, like to register that like, oh, it can't go higher or lower. So there was like the base, and you could do a move like 5 times in either direction, but after like the 6th time for something that would lower or raise a stat, it would just overflow to the other end. So if you went like 6 up, you would end up at the bottom, or if you went like 6 down, you'd end up at the top. And it was like the dumbest thing, especially if there was like an enemy Pokemon that would just keep using Growl on you. Eventually, you would just get your max attack buff by accident.
Yeah, but it was tough back then because you didn't have this nice Visual Studio kind of interface where you could say, oh, if it hits this point, don't add any more or don't subtract any
Yeah.
more.
Well, I mean,
You had to
I
do it
feel
all
like
in freaking assembly language.
yeah, they had to do it in assembly, but I feel like it was just something they didn't think about, right? Because they were
Yeah.
very inexperienced at the time, right? Just in general, because I think they even solved that problem not by the half point by yellow, but by gold and silver. I believe that was solved, and they they were working on much of the same framework. It was all done in assembly too. They were copying their own homework, and
Yeah,
that
SNES
didn't
and
have
Game
that
Boy
problem.
Advance.
you know,
Yeah, both of those were still assembly language. Yeah.
yeah. Well, this was Game Boy Color at the time, technically.
Oh, yeah.
Well, it was Game Boy, but
Still 8-bit.
the Game Boy Player was out, and they knew they were working on the Game Boy Color, so these cartridges were made to where there was like color coding in them. You would play it on the Game Boy, and then if you happen to put it in the Super Game Boy or a Game Boy Color later, the hue of the town, like the town, everything, depending on what area you're in, would change for the area. So it still wasn't like
Right.
full color, but there was color to the world depending where you were.
Yeah, yeah. Speaking of speed, when you mentioned that, I thought I'd bring up something interesting.
Oh, eh?
And I'm guessing you know this already, but I just found out last night. I was playing Tears of the Kingdom, which is, God, it's such a humongous game. I feel like I haven't played, I know that I've gotten to 100 hours, but I feel like I'm like 25% through the game. Like, I feel like
That
there's so much to do.
Game is so huge
It's massive.
that every time I look at it, I put off playing it even more.
I keep playing it and I'm just like, am I making progress? I mean, it's great. It's awesome. But I just found the horse god, Melania or whatever her name is, his name. And you can upgrade your horses now.
Oh, okay.
Did you know that?
No,
You
I
didn't
did not
know
know
that?
that. No.
Yeah, you couldn't do that in Breath of the Wild. You have to give him something. I guess I won't spoil it for you. You have to give him something to do it. It's kind of like upgrading your armor. You need certain, but it's a special something that you need to give him. But you can upgrade every aspect from speed to power to everything. So you can take a shitty horse and turn it into, all 5 stars. It's amazing. I was like, oh my God, you can upgrade horses. They've added so much to it. It's great. Yeah, just discovered that last night. Also, the mazes are really cool.
Oh, yeah, because they're up
challenge.
as well. Like, yeah.
Yeah, there's basically 3 levels to them now. They're sky, regular, and underneath.
Yeah.
But anyway,
I
just
will-
thought I'd bring that up.
One day, eventually, play through the game. 'Cause I've toyed around with it. Like, okay, yeah. Aside from the building system, it does just feel like I'm playing Breath of the Wild again. Like, mechanically, there's like no difference there. But like aside from that, it's like I've had almost no desire to play the game because I've seen basically the whole game at this point, right? Because right before my mom's passing, they were playing that game like crazy. So I was watching it while doing all this other stuff in and out and all that. So I've seen the whole thing. I know what happens in the game. I already have a feel for how the game plays. That is like, I just don't have a desire to play this game until like enough time has passed that it's like fresh in my head. Especially because like, while I think they're good games, I wouldn't say they're not good games. I don't think they're good Zelda games. Okay, this is not the direction I want Zelda going. I think Zelda is outgrowing me. I'm not the only person who is thinking this in some degree. Friend of the channel who used to come on here quite often, but he hasn't been around in a while, Lord Pataya. You will still sometimes see him online in the regular section of the Discord. Gave similar sentiments where he's like, this is a really good game, but this isn't the direction I want Zelda going. It's like, oh my God, why do we still have the same opinion on Zelda? But it's just like, I'm glad somebody else said it though. It's like, this is not what I want from a Zelda game. I do think it's a really good game from a design aspect. I do think it does some Zelda things right, but every time I look at it, it just leaves me wanting. I'm like, I would kind of just want like another Link to the Past or Ocarina of Time, like either of those two games. Just like as bored
I'd
as I
love to have
was
a-
with, you say?
I'd love to have another 2D Zelda that's a bit more formulaic, where you go to a dungeon. Inside the dungeon is a new item that gives you special ability. You have to use that ability to complete the dungeon, and then and future dungeons end up also requiring to use that ability plus another
Yeah.
one plus another. And they combine them in interesting ways.
Well, that's why
like
to
that
me, I
form.
think for 3D, I think Wind Waker is still the peak of Zelda. And as bored as I always claim that I was playing Twilight Princess, I did think in some areas it was going in the right direction. From dungeon design, I really, really liked Snowhead Temple. I thought that was like a peak dungeon, and I even liked the whole like almost mini game that you had to do to get to it the first time was pretty cool. And what was the Arbiter's Ground? I thought was
Snowboard.
also a really good one, right? With the
Oh,
when you
yeah.
get the top for the first time and
spinner.
everything. Yeah.
The spinner that's completely useless everywhere else in the game.
Well, no, it's useful again in the final level when you go to Hyrule Castle.
Yeah.
There are some parts where, and it's fun to toy around with. But yeah, it's not like it's the least useful of all of the things that you get. But
Yeah.
the whole dungeon is designed around it. It's really fun. Those were like the 2 points of the game where I wasn't really bored. I was really enjoying that. I'm like, man, I wish more of the game was this. That's
Well,
what
I
I
liked-
want from a Zelda game is I just want them.
Yeah.
The world doesn't need to be expansive. I want the dungeons to be expansive. Just make me a game where it doesn't take me too long to get between dungeons, but I can spend like an hour or up to 3 hours in a single dungeon. If you want the game to be longer, just make me spend 3 hours in a dungeon, and I will be fine with that.
Yeah, I liked in Snowhead, the two things I liked about that were the parts where you had to figure out how to get the cannonball to the cannon and then point the cannon in the right place to open up a new area. And then also the fact that you had to keep getting these different ingredients for the soup to to revive the Yeti.
Yeah. Well, and like
You had to keep bringing back the cheese and this and that.
not just of that game, but I think the Zant boss fight at that temple is one of the most memorable boss fights in a Zelda game. Like I can like vividly remember doing that boss fight with
The one where you're looking down in the mirror.
Yeah, there's like, and you have to use the big chain ball to fight him.
Oh,
on ice.
yeah. Yeah, that was pretty cool. That's another item that is kind of useless, but yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
but like to me, that's
fun.
like the most memorable boss fight. Like I can vividly remember doing that boss fight, like even to this day.
Yeah, figuring out that I think you had to kind of point the camera down.
Yeah,
like it wasn't
because
always
there
pointing
was
down. But if you
he
look
made
down,
like
you
these
could see
copies
the
of
reflection.
himself, and only the real
Yeah.
one reflected. So that's why you had to look at the ice. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. You look down to figure out what was above you. Fitzgerald says they're trying to turn Zelda into Elder Scrolls. Yeah.
Yeah,
Kinda.
yeah, to a degree. And I do think there's going to be one more Zelda game where I'm still going to say it's a good game, but I'm not going to enjoy it as a Zelda game because it does look like this is going to be a trilogy.
Oh?
Well, it's heavily hinting on it. They even kind of suggested it might turn into a trilogy, especially because we actually haven't even seen the Triforce yet. And it's everywhere in the background. And the trilogy might get topped off with the Triforce. There's a lot of rumors going around. There hasn't been a report. We can't confirm it from Nintendo. But like it's heavily hinted from the game,
heard that.
and there are rumors. So if there is a trilogy, it would be nice if this trilogy capstoned it. Like, okay, you did this experiment. You did a very successful experiment too. But let's also experiment some other things and maybe get me back some classical formats of Zelda too. Just give me something. I don't. At the same time, like you usually do a 2D and 3D series, give me something else. You know, another Link Between Worlds style thing. I thought Link's Awakening remake was great. Give me, I don't know, that style remake of the Oracles. Fuse them into one game where maybe you have to hop between the two worlds, like the timelines of the Oracles, and they interact with each other.
Yeah.
That would be kind of cool. I would.
I think
love that.
Link Between Worlds to me was my favorite 2D Zelda.
Oh yeah. because it took my favorite one, which was A Link to the Past, and then made it even cooler. It's like, oh, this is just Link to the Past plus with its own story. It's my actually, I think that's my favorite Zelda period right now is Link Between Worlds.
Yeah. What was the other thing I was going to say about? Oh yeah, my one problem. So I like Tears of the Kingdom. I guess maybe because I never did really play Skyrim, so I'm not sick of it.
Well,
Yet,
also,
but
it's immeasurably better game than Skyrim.
yeah. But you know, so I'm still very much enjoying myself, just exploring the world and everything. But the one complaint that I have about it, it's a kind of a major complaint, is that, you know, in Breath of the Wild, the memories being out of order didn't bother me because it didn't really have an effect on anything. It was like, okay, you kind of already knew what happened. It was just kind of piecing it all together in specifics. Plus, a lot of it didn't matter at all. It was like, okay, here's a scene of them, you know.
A lot of it was just characterization.
Looking for frogs, and here's a scene of Link practicing his sword. It was no big deal.
It's giving you reason to like these characters, is what a lot of them
is. Yeah. With this one, the Dragon Tears, it bugs the shit out of me when I see them in the wrong order. Because you don't know the story. You don't know what happened in the past. And I want to find out, but I want to find out in order.
Yeah. I agree with that.
I ran into one scene where I was like, oh shit, you know, something bad happened, but I don't know what exactly. And then later I watched the scene just before it, and I was like, damn, that would have been even better if I'd seen it in order. And and then, you know, just by luck, I happened to run into, there were two scenes again that were kind of like that, but I did see them in order. And so I was like, God, thank God I saw them in order, because if I had seen those in reverse, one of them would have totally ruined, like spoiled the previous one. And I was like, these memories are spoiling each other, and it driving me nuts. I just want to see them in order.
There are two ways they could have solved that problem. They could have either made, not that you had to do them in order, but they could have put it even more on rails for finding the order. Because the first one, finding in the right order, is very easy because it's the one that the quest directs you to do. They could have given you more direction of like, okay, and this is the next one. But some people would find that lame. The other way to do it would be that none of the symbols actually matter or correlate to the memories at all, and that just whatever order you find them in will play 1, 2, 3, 4 in that order, right? It like there's no actual corresponding memory to a location. It just unlocks the next memory once you hit the next location.
Yeah. Anyway, that's my one complaint, is like that worked just fine in Breath of the Wild. It is not working for me in Tears of the Kingdom.
Well, for a heavily story-driven game, even more story-driven than the previous game, where in other aspects it is even more on rails than the previous game, it is a very valid complaint. I agree.
Oh well. But it's fascinating. I love the cutscenes. I will say one thing about them, though, is that in general, they're so much better. Like, the story is so much better than Breath of the Wild. It's fantastic.
I'll say from a technical point, I agree with you. I think it is a technically better written story. I don't like the story as much. That's another place where it's losing me. I actually just don't like the direction the story is going. Especially the
I like it.
Not to spoil it for anybody, the ending. The snapback of the rubber band just feels really weak for me at the ending. Like one of the big twists to the story, the way it gets resolved, I thought was like really weak and unsatisfying.
Are you talking about? I don't want to spoil it either, and I might not even know because I haven't gotten all the memories yet. But
yeah.
Are you talking about how he gets the Master Sword back?
Yeah, how he gets the Master Sword back and how he meets up with Zelda again. Like that whole situation to me was very unsatisfying.
Yeah, I thought it was fascinating. I was like, oh, there we go.
I thought the build up to it was fascinating, But the thing is, like, the more you build something up, it's like stretching a rubber band back, the harder it has to hit. And it was like we stretched this all the way back, and then it hit like a limp noodle, right? That's how I felt.
I didn't think so. I was kind of floored when I realized what was going on. I was like, oh my God. It's like, I thought it was crazy. I was just like, I love it.
And it's specifically how it gets resolved at the very end. Like with the whole boss fight and stuff, I
haven't gotten there yet.
yeah. That's the point. It's
that.
not all that. That's why I'm saying I'm not spoiling. It's how that gets resolved is the point that was weak to me, right? So maybe you'll still disagree with me, but maybe you will by the time you actually get there. But
yeah, I'm just talking about the whole how Zelda,
no, that part I thought that was being built up really well.
That was fascinating.
It's still not the direction I would have taken it, but from a writing standpoint, I do think it was technically built up like really well.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Well, now I'm going to be prepared to be disappointed because I don't know what you're talking about, actually.
Or maybe
we'll see. Maybe
with that hesitation, it might hit even better, right? Because you're prepared to be disappointed, and then you actually ended up really liking it.
Yeah, I guess we'll see. I need to find all the rest of the memories.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's fascinating. I feel like if I wasn't, constantly saying I should do a video about this, I should do a video about that, and never doing it because I never have time, or I'm too tired, or I'm lazy. I feel like I or somebody should do a video on like the differences between, like the major differences between Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. Things like being able to upgrade your horses, like that.
I think people have done articles on it. I haven't seen like a dedicated video detailing it, so you'd have to be like reading it if you want.
Yeah, just specifically like the cool things that they made better, I think.
I kind of would actually maybe even prefer just doing something akin to sequelitis myself. Have you ever seen sequelitis?
Sounds familiar. I might have seen it.
So are you familiar with the probably renowned internet creator Egoraptor, Aaron Hansen, right? Made a thing called Game Grumps. Before that, he used to do a bunch of Flash animations. Well, he had a very short-lived series called Sequelitis that was barely animated in between the stuff he was talking about. It was almost more like animatic sometimes, but he did draw like a little cartoon version of himself talking in between the videos. And he would be talking about how, like, here's a game, and here's a sequel to the game, and here's why the sequel doesn't necessarily live up to the game that it came from, whatever. And one of the big ones that he did was, I think it was like 3D Zeldas to 2D Zeldas, and why 3D Zeldas don't live up to 2D Zeldas, right? And like a big thing was Link to the Past and Ocarina of Time, which are very good games to compare to each other because they're basically telling the same story to some degree. And one of the big problems that I think Breath of the Wild actually solved is ever since Zelda went 3D, there's like a disconnect between combat and exploration, right? And that's part of like the Z targeting that you have to do for 3D combat. It almost feels like you're entering an encounter, like in an RPG, as opposed to like exploring the world and entering combat. And it'll like sometimes turn you completely around. You have no idea where you're going because of it. And it's like, here's the exploring phase, here's the combat phase. And it was like that all the way up until Breath of the Wild, where I was reminded of sequelitis. I'm like, no, the combat and the exploration in this game feel like they're one and the same. Like there's no difference between them. And that's how the older Zelda games were, where there's no difference between exploration and combat. It's just you moving through the world doing things. I feel like Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom kind of need a sequelitis for a before and after Breath of the Wild phase of Zelda, because they are very, very different. It's like there's, for 3D Zelda, Ocarina of Time through Skyward Sword, and then there's a cutoff point, and then it's Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom are Zelda, but they're very different Zelda games that are still functioning in 3D. And like a video like that would probably be worth making, and I just haven't decided whether I'm going to do that or not. I think, what was the other one? He did another sequelitis that was pretty good too for another game, but I can't remember what it was.
The other thing that's a huge difference between them is the fact that you can affect the only thing you could really affect in the world, unless I'm forgetting something, in Breath of the Wild was Terrytown, right? You could basically gradually
that was pretty much the only thing that actually changed.
Yeah. And in Tears of the Kingdom, there's a ton of shit. I mean, basically every I don't know what you call it, boss, dungeon thing has a big effect on a whole area, first of all, and changing what's happening there. Plus, there's all these smaller things like freeing. That's another thing I did last night was freeing Laurelin Village because there's pirates that take it over, and so the whole village is burned down, and there's monsters everywhere. And you go in and you defeat the monsters, and then people move in, and then you have
Which
to
I like that
down.
because that was probably my favorite place in Breath of the Wild to go to, and it felt so unsatisfying that like there's nothing here but a
Wasn't
couple
much to
shrines
do.
around it. Yeah.
Yeah. But here it's like, oh, there's a whole like story, like a side story where you can take this ruined village and build it back up, and people move in, and it's kind of like, but then there's a bunch of them like that all around, all these little Terry towns everywhere. I mean, even what's the village? Not Kakariko, but the other one, the one where
Hateno?
Hateno, yeah. Even Hateno, when you get there, there's something crazy going on that you have to resolve. And
Yeah.
anyway,
And I like that. I just wish it was focused more into. I'm sick of the whole open world adventure, go wherever you want to go thing. Especially because like I think Link Between Worlds still did it better, where it's like, okay, we're gonna give you all the items, and then you can still pick what direction you want to go, but there is still kind of like almost a guided story here, right? And that's kind of what they're trying to do with Tears of the Kingdom. I kind of just want a Ocarina of Time style guided story where you can kind of go off and do your own things and do like side quests and stuff out of order. But like when it comes to like a storytelling action RPG, which you could consider the action adventure genre that Zelda's in is kind of in the action RPG genre. The one that I think of that did it the best out of any game ever, and I think it was popular at the time, but not enough people have played it since, is the SNES game The Illusion of Gaia, right? Which was a follow-up to Soul Blazer, which is also a really good game, but the story in Soul Blazer wrapped up. So there was no point in making a direct sequel. Instead, they made basically like a spiritual sequel to it called The Illusion of Gaia, where you play as a boy who is like the hero, like the chosen servant of Gaia that's going to go through the world and fix the darkness. And he can basically summon power from the heroes of old, so he can use these statues to switch places with a knight called Freedom and like an assassin, I think his name is Shadow, which gives you different moves. It's almost like Majora's Mask, where he could turn into the different like Zora and Deku and stuff to do things, right? And you're going through all of this world. There's scenes that he goes through, like actual story that's being told in a very, very guided thing. Like you're progressing from world to world, and a story is being told, and there's all of these different dungeons that you have to explore. In fact, basically every world that you go to is just one big dungeon, and you're spending all your time in that dungeon. You might spend an hour in one place. The action's great. The puzzles are great. At no point does it feel like it's wasting your time while you're playing it, telling this story. And all the boss fights are memorable. Like, in some ways, it's not as cool as modern games because it is something that was limited to what they were doing on the Super Nintendo. But if you've never played the game, I highly recommend people play Illusion of Gaia, because if you play it, it's one of those games that will make you rethink what you want from video games. All right, and I mean, you probably think of a few of them. There's been several games in your life that you end up playing that you're like, man, this did this so much better than other games that tried to do similar things, and I would rather have more of this from games.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd say like, Final Fantasy 3, especially after 6. It was called 3 in the US.
Yeah.
Especially after I had played Final Fantasy 2 in the US, 4, and thought that was great and all, but like then the next one was like so much farther ahead. It was like, oh wow, like this is fantastic. It was just so cinematic and everything. But
that was the game that basically made the company too, right? Because like they're working on that. They're also working on Chrono Trigger at the same time and Super Mario RPG. All three of these games are coming out within relative respect to each other too, and they're all doing what they do better than like any other game that tried to do the same thing before them.
Yeah, and then they did Final Fantasy VII. I was like, shit.
To some degree, I thought if they had continued making it for the Super Nintendo like they were going to, because that's how they were going to have to put it on the 64s. They were going to have to actually make a 2D game that was just being played through the 64 engine. It probably would have been a better game because it would have just looked like 6, but with like Cloud and Tifa and stuff.
Yeah, and when I got 7, I didn't get it right away because I didn't have a PlayStation until years later. And so then when I finally played it, I was like,
you were sad.
Kind of over it.
I had
never played it through until recently.
The year the PlayStation came out, and I still didn't have 7. And we really liked Final Fantasy. The problem was like just my mom didn't want things that weren't Nintendo. So even though we owned a PlayStation and Final Fantasy was one of her favorite franchises, she just never got Final Fantasy 7 or 8. In fact, I didn't come back to 7 until years later, which I think allowed me to play the game without like rose tinted glasses on, right? And be like, okay, yeah, it's a good game. I can still say it's a good game. It's not as good as 6. Like I can name other Final Fantasies that are better than 7, but it's a good game that I enjoy. I actually played 8 before that, not all the way through, but we borrowed it from one of our neighbors. And God, 8 did not give me a really good impression of 7 before playing it, because a lot of the people that I knew that liked 7 really liked 8 as well. And I was just like, how can you like this game?
A lot of people still do. I see it all the time.
I know.
On Twitter saying 8 is their favorite of all time. And I'm like, really?
It's because 8 is their favorite cast. That's the real reason. It's not the game. And the cast is actually really good, aside from maybe Squall. Squall's the main character is like the weakest point of that game, cast-wise. But like the rest of the cast is really good. So I can understand why anybody might like that as their favorite cast. But it's not the gameplay. That's not why they like the game at all.
As one of these days, I got to give it a fair shake and try playing it through to the end. But yeah, I mean, 7. The thing is, I never played it through until I did like last year, and I very much enjoyed it all the way through. But
yeah, because it's still a good game.
Yeah. But originally, when I got it, I don't think I got past disc 1. So
that's okay. We're gonna make a game, and it's gonna be great.
Cool.
We're gonna make a game that redefines what people want from games. Probably not, but that's what we should at least hope for.
Yeah. Well, did you see that guy Did you see the guy complaining about? I don't know if we went into this story. The guy complaining about Baldur's Gate 3.
No.
Basically
I haven't heard
saying
anybody complaining about Baldur's Gate 3.
It's a developer that's basically complaining that the game is too good, and complaining
I'm not
that
surprised.
that he's worried that it's going to set a standard or an expectation that other games are going to have to be this good. And I'm like, and the problem with that is,
it's a
plus like
competitive market. You should be trying to set the standard.
Yeah, get good, scrub. But yeah, I mean, it was a ridiculous. It was a big long tweet thread with video and this whole big long write up, and I'm like, I didn't even understand his point fully, because it was kind of implying that this AAA top tier game that's associated with Dungeons and Dragons, the pinnacle of RPGdom, at least it has been, over many years, many decades. Like that's gonna set an expectation for some dinky little indie game that may be great, but is not gonna be.
The only thing that sets expectations for indie games are other indie games, and it's still that's a big definition, right? they're going to look at like your
Yeah.
team size and your budget, and that's where it's like, okay, well, look at this other
Yeah.
team that did something similar to you on the same budget but way better. And then you'd be like, okay, well, we
Yeah.
tried our best. That guy's actually just a prodigy. He was doing things that nobody else figured out. We still tried to get you a good game, okay?
Yeah, I mean, I don't see what the problem is. I don't think anyone. I mean, everyone knows Baldur's Gate 3. I mean, I think at least people who bothered to look it up knows that there were hundreds of people involved in that game. I mean, the credits. I'm sure you could look at the credits. And there's hundreds of developers, multiple studios came together.
Oh, yeah, I think
To do it.
what? There were 4 times as many people that worked on that game as they did on Baldur's Gate 2.
Yeah. So, I mean, he's worried that, like, oh, my studio of 50 developers is not going to be able to put out this thing that was made by 500 developers. I'm like, duh, everybody
Try
knows
more.
that. What? I know, but I think more. And I watched an Asmongold video about this guy. I don't even remember who it was. I don't think he had a name that I recognize. But his take was what he's really concerned about is that Baldur's Gate 3 is shipping not broken. That it is shipping in a working, decent state.
Oh, wow, man. That's
And-
like super rare
and
these days for something
it
that's
is,
like not
though, right?
Nintendo.
Yeah. And he thinks that that's really what the guy's. He didn't say that, but reading between the lines, I think he's worried that people are going to be even more upset when a game ships all fucked up and broken and,
Which again-
promised features not included. And
The same situation applies, though. They're still more forgiving of a smaller indie dev, even if
Yeah.
they do have up to 50 people working on it. Most indie devs would be lucky for that. But like they'd be more
Yeah.
forgiving because they're like, okay, it probably wasn't the budget to have like an excessive number of game testers like AAA studios should be having for you to re-go back over and stuff. Maybe you didn't even catch this one thing that was breaking everything. And most indie devs, there's a reputation that they're going to stay on the project and fix it after the fact. Probably
Yeah.
more so than even AAA.
even AAA though.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, but I mean, Cyberpunk 2077 was a piece of shit, broken mess.
Yeah.
And I mean, and that's
It's eventually
not
playable.
even
It's playable now, but I mean,
Yeah.
too little, too late.
right. But I mean, I think that's what this guy was worried about. That like, oh my gosh, this game is actually looks good when it's shipping with all the features they promise and they all
Yeah,
work and there's no major, bugs where things are flipping out all over the place. And
Well, guy whose name
It's
I
like-
don't know, don't worry about it. Your game could be a half broken mess as long as it's half playable with your dev team size.
Yeah.
People are just going to be amazed that you got something out and that you're probably still willing to work on it. You're not going to be
Yeah.
held to the same standards that Baldur's Gate should be setting for the rest of the main industry, the big AAA
Yeah, I don't know what-
companies.
I don't know what the guy's worried about. Nobody's gonna. Yeah. People are
right
still
about-
going to be. This is just how it is,
There was a villain, one of the bad guys, because like video games tend to have several different villains that you fight. In Resident Evil 5, his name was Irving, and he was like the scientist who was working on the Ouroboros project that was changing everything. And you were hunting him down, and the first time you meet him, he's like, I'm not like the other guys. I'm a villain with standards, right? He was a very, very fun character. And then, like, right before you actually have the boss fight with him, and he injects himself with the Ouroboros kind of like parasite virus thing, he's just like, you guys need to stop. You're making me look bad. And that's just like, you're describing this guy, and I'm just seeing Irving in my head saying the words that are coming out of his mouth.
Yeah. I don't think he has anything to worry about. There's so many more broken games than there are, perfect games at launch. That, I mean, and like you said, vast majority of Nintendo games are shipped very polished and done with,
And if
really
they're not,
only minor.
you can guarantee there's a day one patch that will fix it before you even play that game.
Yeah. Or they'll fucking scrap the whole thing and not talk about it again for for 6 years, like Metroid Prime 4.
Yeah, but you don't want Metroid Prime 4. You know what you actually want? You want another Donkey Kong Country Returns. That's what you want.
Oh yeah. And a Donkey Kong movie to go with it.
Oh God, no,
Give me- Yay.
Yeah, well, we're at the end of the show. If you
Oh
guys,
wow. We're actually finishing on time.
We are, especially because we barely had anything to talk about. We
Slow news.
blew the shot the shit for a little bit. It was a very slow news week. Normally, I could go through like 3 pages of the sites we go to and find things we haven't talked about between the last episode. Today was like on page 2. I was already hitting stories I passed over last time. Like it genuinely was a slow news week. The websites couldn't even bullshit more than they normally do.
Yeah.
All right. So if you guys enjoyed the show, please share it with other people, as many people as you can. Strap them down to a chair and force them to watch it.
Donate to the air conditioner fund.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say, if you really enjoy the
Please.
show, consider giving a donation to streamlabs.com/vomitorium live. It's not just the air conditioning. It's like everything's hitting at once, right? Like the amount of rent goes up. There's a car accident. Insurance isn't covering the full thing. I think we have to cover like a quarter of it. The AC unit goes out. Like just so many expenses hitting at once. So if you like the show at all and have a little bit of decency in your heart, consider giving a donation to help us out during our troubles. And stay tuned. We might be working on a video game soon, so we'll definitely want to keep you updated on that. That'll be fun. It'll be very fun. I've got really, really good ideas. I'm going to try to get some assets out this week that just to show you some ideas of what I want. And we'll see you guys in the next episode.
Bye.